We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back with Liberty Nation senior political analyst Tim Donner. Earlier in the show, we were discussing the Trump indictment and how that's going to impact him running up to the 2024 election. But what I want to talk about now, Tim, is the interplay between Joe Biden and President Trump, and really how the polls are looking at this and what factors we can draw in there. So I believe you've got the recent average of polls for us, haven't you, for the 2024 general election?
Yes, it shows that Donald Trump is leading Joe Biden by just under 2 points. Now, how significant that is, it's hard to tell, except you've got to think that's going to change quite a bit, because we're going to be hearing so much about these 37 counts that Trump is standing against after, pleading not guilty. For all the complicated, unprecedented factors that people have to weigh, including the arrest of a former president and political enemy, and whatever transgressions they believe Trump actually committed. They also have to deal with the fact that the choice in the end actually comes down to something that can be described fairly easily. Are they going to vote for the guy who is perceived as too weak, or the guy that's too strong? In other words, Joe Biden is someone who weakness is now defining. Donald Trump is the opposite. Strength defines him, whether you see it excessive strength or whatever, but he's never been called weak.
It's that toxic masculinity of his that you're talking about, isn't it?
That's correct. You picked that up. Good for you, Mark. But this is the choice, basically, between two candidates that a majority of Americans say they don't want running for president. They don't like this choice, which means the turnout might not be that great. But with ballot harvesting, you'd think in a small turnout, the Democrats definitely have an advantage because they can generate ballots for their candidate to a degree that the Republicans can't. And that's a complicated question, because of community organizing essentially gives the Democrats a huge advantage in harvesting ballots in the many states where that is legal. So I think people have to make a really hard choice. I mean, this is not Al Gore against George W. Bush. This is not Bill Clinton against Robert Dole. And this is not Ronald Reagan against Walter Mondale. You're talking about two polar opposite forces who would certainly put a beating on their opponents once the election was over. So if I'm the Democrats, I guess I'd be gleeful that Trump finally got his comeuppance, quote unquote, but I'd also fear for the country, and I'd really fear for what happens if Trump gets elected again, because I can't even imagine the measures he's going to take. And maybe then all those leftists who promised to leave the country when George Bush was elected, when Donald Trump was elected, maybe they'll actually leave the country for fear of what a President Trump back in the White House might do.
Well, we're discussing obviously that former President Trump is likely going to be the front runner, and as you mentioned to me before, Tim, the vagaries this far out, you can't really get a good sense of how the Republican nomination is going to go, although we can presume that the indictment will, to some extent, impact that. But let's talk about the Democrat field, because you said one of the most interesting quip lines when we were speaking earlier about a plug-and-play president. Would you care to expand on that? I just thought it was fascinating, and these words perfectly apply. They just click in the mind.
Well, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is traveling the country and appearing on media, even on Fox News with Sean Hannity, as if he's a presidential candidate, while at the same time saying, I fully support Joe Biden. He's done a great job. I love the legislation he's passed, et cetera, et cetera. But he's putting himself in a position with that interview, with ads that he's taking out, attacking Ron DeSantis. And people might say, well, he's doing that because the Democrats are more scared of DeSantis than they are of Trump as an electoral opponent. But he is acting in every way as if he was a presidential candidate without being one. So plug and play means if Joe Biden does, and it certainly is conceivable with 17 months to go before the election of an enfeebled president looking for a second term, that he just might not make it to the starting gate. Well, Gavin Newsom is ready to jump right in like a plug and play device that you get for your computer. Just plug it in and it works. And of course, Newsom is a incredibly glib, handsome, articulate, clever politician. Everything that Joe Biden isn't. And by exposing himself as much as he has, attacking DeSantis, going on national TV, crisscrossing the country to make speeches, presumably in support of Joe Biden's candidacy, he's signaling to the base. Look at the contrast here between this old man who can't even leave the stage without face planting and me, young, virile, handsome, dynamic. The comparison is, the contrast is unmistakable, and he's making himself very much available to a base that really doesn't want to see Joe Biden run again, even though they're grateful for the fact that he took down Donald Trump in 2020.
A candidate in waiting would smell as sweet. Tim Donner, thanks ever so much for joining us today.
It's always too much fun, Mark.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Don't get caught up in the media madness. Join our movement for free thinking and free speech at libertynation.com. Publishing news and analysis 24/7 with original articles by our team of authors who tell it like it is. Join us each week for online TV shows, The Uprising Podcast, and Liberty Nation Radio. We believe in free thinking and free speech. We are libertynation.com.